This weekend, Ryan cleans the streets, Andy gets pushy, and we try our best with the buy, rent, burn. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andy.
And this is Weekend Rental, episode 177. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Wild week in the world of the video game industry. Kind of even today, like stuff has been dropping. Well, let's just kick it off with the big one. I've seen some people on Twitter getting very confused as to what was actually announced, telling everyone that the Switch was going to be out before fiscal year for Nintendo, which would be March 2025. But what Nintendo actually said was they will unveil the Switch successor within the next fiscal year. That does not mean we'll have it. And then they also referenced, do you remember how exciting it was 9 years ago in 2015 when we unveiled the Switch 2 or the original Switch? And I was like, no, I don't remember that. I recall the lead up to the launch, but I don't recall it being unveiled 2 years before. And I guess I hope to God that doesn't mean that they're going to tell us about the Switch successor and then wait 2 more years to release it. Because that seems like a bad business move. 9 years between consoles for something that is already struggling, even with first-party titles, seems rough.
Yeah, that's yeah, it would be cool if they had it out by next year. Yes. It almost has to be. I guess they could delay it into 26, but
this feels very much like an announcement where like delays have been rumored and stock prices are dropping. So let's get it out there in writing that we'll at least talk about it and tell you about it before. And then to like very cautiously be like, there will be a Nintendo Direct in June where we will not talk at all about what comes after the Switch. Because I don't know what they're going to talk about what's coming out the rest of the year for the Switch.
Yep.
Prime 4, maybe? Is that that's it?
Is there any more GameCube games we can remake or remaster?
Well, everyone's really clamoring for that. It's right over here. What is that one called? Twilight Princess. Yes. Because supposedly that's done, tabled, ready to go, along with, I've heard rumored that Prime 2 is remastered, ready to go, and they're sitting on it, which
sure.
Both of those make sense to bring into the early fold of a next-gen console when you may not have a lot of first-party titles. So,
yeah, I mean, Prime 2, I could see, because that's more of an overhaul like Prime, that first Prime thing was. Twilight Princess, they're probably just putting out the HD Wii U one, right?
Oh, 100%, right? Yeah. Hey, do you want to play the Zelda where you don't play as Zelda the entire time? Yeah. Buy this game. That's where I fell off on that one. Super excited for it, and I was like, I don't want to be a wolf anymore. Mm-hmm. Can I just play as Link, please? And then I thought it would be like, all right, they're just teaching me a lesson, and then it'll open up and I'll be Link again. And then I was like, no, that's not happening. And I stopped playing. And I bought it for the Wii, which meant I had to buy the component cables because otherwise you had like 5 foot of draw distance and just clouds. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really awesome.
The Wind Waker one, everybody hated it because of how it looked, but at least that one looked kind of visually appealing. I just thought Twilight Princess was pretty ugly and generic.
And just not a great story. Yeah, I thought Wind Waker was a genuinely fantastic and fun game once you get past the visuals. And I still love like the rewritten history on that and like how everyone's like, greatest fucking Zelda game of all time. I'm like, no, fuck you. Like you all shit on it. Or everyone who was your dad shit on it because you weren't alive, but you now appreciate it even though you're like 19 and that game was out before you existed. So I mean, I'm all on board with like the rewriting of like history and that one being appreciated because it is a great game. Oh God, I got a pop up that's going to show up in the video. Go away. Stop being overzealous. Stupid Microsoft. Yeah, but to me, there's just very little redeeming qualities for Twilight Princess. I think it was a flawed take on where the genre should have headed, or the series should have headed. I would even appreciate, I think, Skyward Sword more than what Twilight Princess tried to do.
Yeah, because that one has like you can vary the different islands that you go to, or not the islands, but where you drop down.
Yeah.
Sky things or whatever, you can vary them quite a bit, and the watercoloring kind of take that they had in that one was a little bit more interesting, I would say.
Plus, it was like the first like solid beetle skin that you would see in subsequent games, where he has like that rigid bowl cut and like it's modern day Beetle, everybody. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this news from Nintendo. I understand why they made the announcement. I'm not gonna be one of those people that says like, yep, it's definitely coming out in the same year they're announcing it. It probably will, right? It'll probably drop in March, unless they're idiots and just can't meet it. But at the same time, it's just like there was some reply, like somebody asked them like, well, what does it look like? And the response was like, well, the way I could describe it is like the Switch next model. Well, that could be pretty disappointing. Like, I don't want Switch next model. I want Switch can keep up with ports from current gen hardware. You know what I mean? You look at like what the Steam Deck does. Like, it doesn't have to run everything at full settings, but it needs to run AAA games at reduced settings. And I feel like the Switch is so far removed from even reduced settings that it's just like, if you can't get it to the point where it's reasonable for developers to just like slightly downscale or like adjust specs, you're going to lose a lot of third-party support, because the Steam Deck is like gaining market share. PC gaming's gaining market share. You know what I mean?
I mean, that has to be the benchmark. They have to be at that Steam Deck level for the next thing.
I agree.
But
that's very on Nintendo.
A few years after, but even so, a few years after that, a new Steam Deck comes out, and all of a sudden you're behind again.
Yeah, unless they're going to adopt like the half-step console model, which I'm not a fan of either. But yeah.
Well, maybe it won't happen because, maybe there won't be any AAA games left at that point.
If they're acquired by Microsoft. Yeah. So you saw that news too, I saw.
Yeah.
Not good.
They shut down the Redfall studio. And
not surprising.
The Hi-Fi Rush one, which is surprising. I mean, that was a claimed game for a small game that they probably had no investment in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, why wouldn't you say, okay, let's see what you can do the next time after that with them? Yeah. And I forget what the third one was, but
I think there were 4 in total. Like, one was a mobile game or studio.
Okay.
Yeah, they were all under the Bethesda banner, which so one of those groups gets rolled into the remaining Bethesda, like Elder Scrolls Online team. But yeah, Microsoft obviously spent a lot of money acquiring studios over the last few years, and kind of like par for the course. They just like acquire stuff, shut it down, or bleed it dry. Like, they've not been good at it, even since acquiring Rare back in the day. You know what I mean? It's like they don't know what to do to foster third-party studios, which is a little scary when they've acquired most of the major ones.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that they don't apply, like product management to Xbox as they do to their other product. That's probably why it's going to be called Microsoft Gaming instead of Xbox Gaming or whatever, that they're rolling it up into the main company, right?
Right.
Because I'm sure there is a lot of like, okay, we have success with this type of, development on software, in other areas of Microsoft. Why can't we apply that and be successful with all these studios and talent that we have? And yeah, they haven't shipped anything. And then the ones that they do, it's like, well, Redfall finally comes out and then whoops,
Well, there was I was reading, there was planned DLC and bonuses that people already paid for that they're not going to have to credit back because development's just stopping on Redfall.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Redfall faltered heavily and never met expectations, but it's weird because look at a company like Sega, where Sega acquired Atlas, which should make everyone afraid, right? Sega mismanages themselves historically awfully, but they realize that Atlas knows their audience and is competent and has left them alone and has probably benefited greatly because it's not like first party Sega stuff has done well. And if Sega can figure that out, why can't Microsoft just, I get that you're all under one banner, but why drop the crushing hammer on some of these studios that just need room to breathe? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wonder about that because these are, a lot of them were successful studios before that too. So why, Arcane, the last game, I guess what was it? Prey? I guess that one was
critically acclaimed, didn't sell well. Yeah.
Yeah. If this was the main Arcane's guy, that would be a different story, but yeah, it's kind of wild that they're not having any type of real success. And then the ones that they do, like Hi-Fi Rush, they just gloss over it. It's not, I don't know. I don't know what this says about Game Pass, because it's at what point is that they come to the conclusion that that's the problem,
right,
to their business model.
Yeah, I think the problem to their business model stemmed from arrogantly naming their console Xbox One as a victory lap. And then also saying you don't have a choice. We're doing DRM and Connect. And I think they shit the bed so hard they were never able to recover. You know what I mean? You could make arguments, but I would say the Xbox One generation essentially didn't exist in most people's minds. You know what I mean? That wasn't a household box, by any stretch.
Could you, I don't know if you could name 10 Xbox One only games that were that you could say top 10, and feel good about.
I bought, as a collector who buys things cheap secondhand, I bought less than 15 games for the Xbox One. And then once my nephew got an Xbox One, I basically grabbed that entire library and gave it to him. I've kept 2 games in my collection because it's just that forgettable to me. And the PlayStation 4 killed it.
The proof is right behind your shoulder, so you're lying to us correctly on stream.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 20, 21, 22. So I bought about 35. I bought about 35 games and gave him at least, because this is about half of my collection. Little more. Yeah. Most of those are shrink wrapped, I'll point out.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of those games are shrink wrapped. So there you go.
Yeah, I was going to say about 80% of mine are all wrapped up too, because it's just stuff you got on clearance that you're yeah, I'll pick that up for
100%.
$8.
Yeah, it was the console you wanted to love, right? But from the get-go, I had no interest in buying it based on what they rolled out. And I think that killed their business model. The only reason I ever picked it up was my dipshit friends initially were no, we're going Xbox. I'm why? Why are we going Xbox? It doesn't make sense. And then PlayStation 4 came out. PlayStation finally figured out online play. They finally figured out friend groups. They finally figured out party chat. And they had a better first party lineup. And all Xbox gave us was worse Gears of War games, worse Halo games, and a bunch of performance bullshit. Like, you know, and
yeah,
I like the Xbox platform now. I think the Series X is great. The Series S, if you've got one and enjoy it, great. I think you're neutering yourself, but the ecosystem between like the PC and the Xbox is awesome. Little janky in spots, but I don't know that I'd care if Game Pass wasn't the main selling point for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that was the reason I went Xbox this time, was for Game Pass. So like if that went away, I would be bummed, because that's how I do I'd say over half of my gaming now.
100%
through Game Pass. But at the same time, there's other avenues for that type of stuff too, you know, free games or whatever.
I could settle into Steam. I could rely on what I'm getting through Epic. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be hard. Yeah. And PlayStation still has yet to offer me any real reason to buy I have a PS5. I don't have a PS5. My son has a PS5. But I as a gamer have no reason to buy that thing.
Yep.
But since we're talking shit about every other major player in the industry, let's talk about PlayStation.
Yeah,
and boy, did they shit the bed. So Sony's been doing very well on the bring our exclusive titles to PC market. They had a massive surprise hit in Helldivers 2, especially on the PC. That game has an ongoing dedicated fan base and like people playing into the lore like crazy. So 6 months after release, Sony rolls out the mandate that, hey, we always intended to have this be a game that if you bought on PC, you also had to log into your PlayStation Network account. So starting in June, if you don't have one, you can't go online with the game, which PlayStation Network's not available in large parts of the world. So immediately that meant that it was delisted on Steam in like over 170 countries.
Yes.
Everyone went nuts online, started threatening the devs and stuff. And they're like, hey, don't point your fingers at us. Like, we just wanted to make an awesome game. We didn't mandate this. And they review bombed the shit out of the game. And coming out of the weekend, Sony came out and said, like, yeah, we fucked up. We heard you. We're gonna roll this back. It's not gonna be required. But I kind of think the damage is done. I mean, in large part to Helldivers too, because Steam was issuing refunds, but also just in the trust of the PC gaming community, because it seems like Sony wants to make that a part of their games going forward, at least in any multiplayer component. And it seems very short-sighted, because their games, when they've ported them off of their exclusive consoles, have done very well, better than expected, I would argue, especially Helldivers 2 on PC. So it's pretty wild. You know what I mean? Like, that's a very adamant fan base for that game.
I could see like Sony, like even before they started porting this, when, you know, like when they were like saying, we're going to start bringing our games to PC, there was some slideshow that was some presentation of how to do this. And there was a slideshow showing a funnel. And at the bottom of the funnel was, all these people are going to log into PlayStation Network. And that's what sold everybody on the idea, I'm sure. And that was the one call to action that they wanted on all of this, is the thing that they can't do now. It's hilarious.
Yeah, you'd think like selling hundreds of thousands of copies to a PC audience would be enough, but
no.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just funny, because it's clearly such a bad decision. You know what I mean? Like, you have all, like, that game has been in the press since it launched. Like, not a week goes by where I don't like Google something gaming news wise and like a Helldivers article comes up, and to just like realize that that's going to just destroy your fan base on the PC market, which is the largest market. I mean, I can't imagine that the PlayStation 5 version is accounting for like more than a third. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a game that's it's such a, you know, it's a squad based game that's like 100% based on community, right? Like you have to have groups of people dedicated to this thing. And just to not get that was going to be bad. And then just like the egg on your face look of, well, within 36 hours, we changed course. You know, that's not, yeah. It's not good. Kind of typical Sony though.
Yeah. I remember on the PlayStation 3 logging into Steam on the PlayStation 3.
What?
Like playing Portal 2. So it's
really?
like, yeah. So it went the other way at one point. I don't remember if it was required to play on the multiplayer was required to log into Steam or not. I should look that up because that would be hilarious if this was the opposite way a long time ago.
Interesting. I will say the one company that can learn from this is Ubisoft, because Ubisoft requiring like their Ubisoft account login bullshit for all our games is hot garbage, because their login system is hot garbage. And like, do you really think people are playing enough of your games to justify having your own like online service and requirement?
But you get the digital rewards, right?
Fuck that. Microsoft is retiring theirs. That should tell you something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess on from depressing modern gaming news. I bought a game. It's a game I played between now and the last time. I bought that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade Wrath of the Mutants game. You ever play this thing in like Dave and Buster's or Pizza Ranch or?
Oh, that's what this is?
Yeah. So it's like that big arcade, 4-player arcade cabinet that came out around, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And it's based on the Nickelodeon properties and those updated characters, but it's largely focused around the original arcade game. I think you start out with like 5 stages and then you get to a shredder stage. This came out on everything. It didn't receive a lot of fanfare. It was $30 physically. I grabbed it for the Switch, and I liked the arcade. I had a good time with it. You get to throw characters into the screen like you do on Turtles in Time. Not overly inventive, not bad enough to be upset about. It's a good time. We played through, I think, about 3 or 4 of the stages as a family, and yeah, I like it. It's a weird thing though, because you like have 2 bosses in every round, which is always kind of fun. But yeah, it's a perfectly acceptable updated take on a classic TMNT game.
Yeah, well, it's weird because it's like technically a new game for console, right? But
yeah, it's still like 15 years old.
It's older than Shredder's Revenge, which was excellent too. So, is it? It's probably a little more outdated than that. I mean, it looks nicer because it's not or newer.
It's a little modern, more simple. I would say like it does a better job of pacing with like the super moves, which I think was the downfall of Shredder's Revenge for me, was just like that cooldown meter for your ultimate move was like so low. It was almost like, well, I'll just not do anything and wait for that to refill, which is a bad mechanic. Yeah. This is a little more, you got to play the game to get the reward. So, I like Shredder's Revenge better, but this is still very, very good.
Yeah.
At least at the price point. If it was $60 or $40 or $50, I'd be like, don't. But for $30, if you're a fan, it's good. Not a lot of content there, being it's a arcade game. You know, like 6 stages is not more than an hour and a half to 2 hours worth of content, but still pretty good.
That's cool. Yeah, I didn't even realize those were out.
Yeah. Huh. I don't think you get a lot of press, to be honest. Like I remember them saying they were going to do it, and then like I just saw it in Target and was like, fuck it. Because video game stores these days have like 5 games in them anyway. So
yeah. Well, I actually went to an arcade last weekend.
Where'd you go?
To the Fun Zone.
Poop your pants?
Pizza Ranch Fun Zone.
All right.
Yeah, poop your pants. Kind of, I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but I was kind of ticked off because we went to the one in Wadena this time. And apparently the cards that you use to like put the money on them and reload and all your tickets are tied to that specific location. So you can't bring them to the other locations
but they're chained.
Use the tickets. Exactly.
Wow.
I can't imagine like Dave and Buster's working that way. Maybe it does.
No,
but
that's got to work across Dave and Buster's, right?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I was pretty ticked off about that. And that one's pretty small overall. It's just like one corner room. Because it's like that Pizza Ranch is like in a downtown area where it's like what how can you fit that in there anyway? But so yeah, I put money on the card before really looking at all the games, and I'm like, oh, this is not a lot of games to spend on.
I feel like those arcades,
a lot of those like press the button and you get tickets. Yeah.
They I mean, I appreciate the fact that they invested into expanding their business into arcades during the pandemic. That seemed like a genius business move on the Pizza Ranch franchise's part. But like why they went so ticket heavy, like, you know, they're all like ticket reward games and like less actual have fun games.
Right. And I mean, when I was a kid, I was about the ticket stuff because it seemed like it was real gambling or money or whatever, right? But I feel like the ticket economy has gotten so much worse than even when we were kids. But
yeah.
I did get sucked up into coin pushers. Like I've mentioned before, I'm all about the coin pushers.
It's your crack.
And I just hate the modern ones because, you know, they don't, just because coins fall off the edge, it means nothing. It's all pointless. You don't get the coin, they don't count as tickets. It's nothing. But there was one there that's like these Marvel things that you get cards. It spits out cards on top and then you get a card that falls down. If you collect all 10 of them, you get, so that I spent a good amount of money on that one because I was one away from getting like the colored ball that I needed to get the big spin.
Really?
And it was lodged in a way that I had to keep putting money into it. Damn it, I'm going to see it, right? Yeah. So I finally do it. Big thing spins, and of course, it's the lowest thing. It's like 80 tickets. Great job. Did not feel good. But I was getting a lot of cards, and I'm like, okay, if you get all the cards, you get a pretty big chunk of tickets, right?
Yeah.
And I have some at home, so I've been keeping them. I'm like, one day I'm going to get all these, you know? On the drive home, I'm thinking, what if you just like buy the ones you need? Like, look on eBay, right?
Okay.
This is how they scam me out of this one. There is one card that barely ever comes out of the machine. It's like a Thanos card, and kind of like how Boardwalk was in the old McDonald's Monopoly stuff, right? Like, it just never shows up. People are buying that card online for like $40 to get tickets that are probably worth what, $5 maybe? I don't know. It's ridiculous.
Well, the base cards themselves still have a point value of like 50 though, right?
Yeah,
so you can still cash those in.
Yeah.
That is a very good coin pusher game, though.
I was like, okay, that's the scam.
I will say that's the one where you feel like you have full control over your coin drops, like into the bonus chute or whatever.
Yep.
But like I'm sure that's the whole thing is like, well, you get 6,000 tickets if you get the full set. And it's like, who's going to do that?
Impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's probably that card is probably not even in that machine, you know?
Yeah. That game definitely feels the most like gambling because you're just like, now one more turn.
Yeah. And it does. It drops a lot of coins. Like compared to like a real coin pusher, it drops a lot of coins. So you feel like, yeah, this feels good, but ultimately it means nothing. Coins don't mean anything in that.
Yeah, I swear when we were kids and you'd go to the like county fairs or like pop-up fairs, like you'd push quarters at you. You were putting quarters in, like you were getting cash payouts.
Yep. And it was like a big deal. If you got a quarter that got stuck on top of another quarter, it was like you really messed up. Like in this game, I'm just kind of like, whatever, just like dumping them in. But
so you're not the biggest fan of Pizza Ranch arcades, is what we're hearing.
No. Yeah, that, especially that one, like that was pretty small. And just the fact that you can't use, I mean, we were saving up tickets on our other card and it's like, okay, now it's split off into,
So you had to like buy whole new cards, basically.
Yep.
Stupid. Well, I guess gambling, I had a little bit of a jackpot of my own. Over the weekend, I took my dog for a walk Sunday afternoon, and it happens to be cleanup week, which I assume most listeners are familiar with cleanup week. It happens spring around the US, or at least in most places, where you just throw your junk out on the curb and the city comes and picks it up once a year. So you don't have to haul it somewhere, right? So basically people just throw piles of shit out on their boulevard next to the street, waiting for the city to come clean it up. And generally there's there are people that live for this shit, right? There are guys that like go around with trailers and they're grabbing like all the scrap metal, cutting wires. So they have like copper to strip from extension cords. And for the most part, people throw out complete and utter trash. And then anything you put on your boulevard, people grab, rip apart, any bags, boxes, anything you've organized neatly, they will destroy like rabid, feral fucking animals. And I hate it. I put stuff out at the last minute and I still get my yard destroyed. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is I walked my dog on Saturday or Sunday and I get 2 houses down from my house. And as we're walking by, I look over because there's a big pile of shit from these people who live down the street from me who live like fucking animals. Like they don't mow their lawn. The guy has he's never cleaned out his gutters in the 8 years that they've lived there or more, to the point where he has saplings growing out of his gutters. They're non-functional, just real stand-up neighbors, the kind of people you want, if they were, the only way it could get worse is if they were sitting on their porch in the front yard, shirtless, smoking meth. That's about how much I appreciate these people living in my neighborhood. But anyway, they had a giant pile of shit. Not surprising. And as we're walking the dog by, I look over and I see green. I see a green DVD case. I was like, well, that's a video game. That's an Xbox game. So I'm like, oh, look at that. Video games. My wife is like, oh, you should probably take a look at that. I was like, nah, I'll come back. Like after we're done walking the dog, I'll come back. And I was like, fuck it. I'll go look. I run over there. It's a lot of Xbox games. And then there's Super Nintendo games. And then there's N64 games. And I find an NES game. And then below that is a box that's like folded up. That's like full of DVDs. And I start like thumbing through the DVDs quick. I was like, this is Ghostbusters. This is Ghostbusters 2. This is Critters. This is like, so I'm like, fuck it. So my wife's like, you should probably just take all of those. It's like, yes, I should. So I'm like, I'll grab this box. You take all these video games that I've piled up in a thing and we'll walk back to the house because we're 2 houses down. We'll drop them off and continue our walk. So we do that. My neighbor's probably watching me do that and think I'm a freak, but fuck them. They can't mow their lawn or clean their gutters. So they're beneath me anyway. I don't care what they think of me. I think their son I think he's in the same grade as my son. And I've asked my kid about him. They're like, well, he's a weirdo. I was like, well, be nice to him. Like everybody's kind of weird, Anyway, not the point. The point is on cleanup week, you always hear of these people posting and they're like, I found this and I'm like, yeah, right. Whatever. Like that shit never happens to me. Like I've never found anything. And finally it happened to me. So I get back from this walk and I start going through these Xbox games. And I want to say there's about 20 original Xbox games, the very first console. And this guy, these are like, again, trash humans as far as like giving a shit about upkeeping their house. These games are like, they're dirty on the outside. Discs are flawless. Some of them don't have the original cases, and for whatever reason, his taste in games, there aren't a lot of Xbox games that go for more than $10, but 4 of these games alone in this lot go for 50 or more. So I got Phantom Dust. I got Call of Cthulhu. I got Resident Evil 4 The Room. I got The Suffering. And then there's a smattering of other games that are all like between $5 to $15. So like Xbox alone, I've made $200. You go into Super Nintendo. I got Super Mario All-Stars, Earthworm Jim, Donkey Kong Country. So there's $100. I got a Mario Duck Hunt for NES. I don't know, $10. You go to N64. I got GoldenEye, and I got WWF. This one surprised me. No Mercy. That's like a $30 game, and then another WWF game. So there's $50 in Super or N64 there, and then just like the ancillary stuff, market value. That guy threw out $500 in games. Yeah. You know what I mean? And most of these are duplicates for me. I'm not gonna keep probably many of them. I am a huge fan of the original Xbox, so I'm gonna look at what I need in my collection. But I've collected most of those, so I don't think I need to keep many of them. So even if I just like casually sell these off at not near market value, I'm gonna make $200. You know what I mean? Even store credit somewhere.
Yeah.
So I was just floored.
That's the Xbox stuff, with it being, the games that are in it, obviously you don't see those games very often. So when you see Xbox One or the original Xbox games, they're never those. No. So that's already a wild thing, but I could see like throwing out Xbox games, right? Sure. I could too. But like, how do you not get the memo that old Mario games are not worth something? Post-pandemic, how do you not realize that your Super Nintendo games are worth a fortune? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you wouldn't take them in somewhere. And I can't believe Earthworm Jim on the Super Nintendo was like a $32 game loose. Like, why is that much? I don't understand. Yeah. Wow. But then I went through the DVDs and like, I think I've talked on the show before about like, I'm big into like the old horror movies and stuff. And like, this guy just nailed like I should probably go talk to that filthy bastard and be like, hey, we're best friends now, man. Cause like, it was like Killer Clowns from Mars or Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It was like Critters, Ghostbusters 2. And then he had like a ton of like the early, I'd say 2005 to 2015 range of DVDs, like all the stuff I liked, a bunch of the horror movies, the Resident Evils. And like, those are great for me because that was the era where I was like, I'm paying $20 a month to have unlimited rentals at Best Buy. So like I have all these games, but they're all in a burned DVD-R book of like 500 movies that I burned because I would go to Blockbuster 3 times a day and get like 6 movies. And then they always ask me, well, how'd you like that movie? I was like, great. Never watched, I like hadn't watched it, of course. So he kind of like filled in the gap of like properly owning these movies that I just pirated. Wow. So I'm like really excited. And there's a bunch of the X-Files seasons in there, like super excited. Wow. I love X-Files. So to get those DVDs, there's a bunch of South Park, a couple seasons of Chappelle. And then, DVDs are arguably worthless, although I think that's starting to trend backwards now. Just super pumped. Like I just could not believe it. I mean, it was one thing to get the shit, but then to like start going through and realize like, as soon as I saw Phantom Dust, I was like, oh shit. And then I started looking up those other ones. I was like, holy crap. I can't believe that this asshole owned all these games. You know what I mean? Yeah. And just threw them out. Well, and the fact that, like you do hear about like all that stuff where, I found this on cleanup day, but those people, they spent the entire day scouring the entire town looking for it, Yeah. It wasn't, I'm walking my dog and I found it two places. It's 3 PM and I should probably walk my dog and like, oh crap. You know what I mean? The best part is like later on that afternoon, I ran somewhere else and had to come back and I'm driving up my block. And there's some guy he's riding one bike. He's got his arm behind him, pulling another BMX bike. And then behind that, he had a toddler bike, but then had wedged 2 more bikes on top of that to make like some weird Transformers amalgamation and was like using the tiny bike as like a bike trailer. It was impressive. The fact that he like engineered that to like follow behind him. But
It was wild. It's like the people that just get into that stuff. I'm like, well, I guess it's great that you got bikes for your entire family, but you look like a psychopath.
I've made it a grill out of like 3 different grills that I've gotten on cleanup week one time.
Well, pro tip, I'm throwing away my grill next Tuesday. So
okay, I'll be up there. And
it sucks ass. Don't get it. If you want to burn your forearms, mine's to the point where like all the burners are so rusted out that it's just like 6-inch of open flame across the front. So it's just terrible. I'm done with it.
Yeah,
that's a good idea though.
Did you feel like, oh, I have to hop in the car and like started scouring then, or were you just kind of like
I realized that like I realized that I had like side-eyed something at the perfect time at the perfect place, and I was like, I'm good.
Yep.
So, and then it rained yesterday and today, so anything that had been thrown over the weekend was ruined. So I'm just glad that. Well, I'm glad that I got it, but I'm also glad that I rescued it before it got rained on. So,
yeah, yeah.
Because I'm gonna put those movies to good use, and I'm gonna flip those games and do something good with them. So,
yeah,
and build up the collection a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I took a couple steps toward thing that I've been threatening my family with was making the shed more of a gamer space in the summer, just like you.
The big one, the Morton building.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bastard. You got way more room than I do.
So yeah, I've got a projector now. And I have a 250-inch screen coming my way.
Nice.
To because I have a 16-foot garage door that's like 12 feet tall too, so I can hang it almost perfectly directly on the rails of the garage door. And it should work pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we've been spending some time out there, but
what kind of projector did you get? Like a 4K or not that fancy?
No, it's just a cheap, like $80 one or whatever.
Okay.
We didn't want to spend too much on it, but
short throw or like any of that fancy shit.
No.
Yeah. Honestly, like those entry level $80 projectors, like don't even have replaceable bulbs anymore. Like it's almost worth it because like they do a damn near 1080p image, and the higher end projectors, if your bulb goes out, you're going to spend over $100 anyway.
Right.
You know, so it's like you can afford to use that thing until it just shits.
Yeah. And I mean, you really have to have the screen and all that other shit to really make it worthwhile too, you know?
Yeah.
And really have a good setup for that to make it like worth investing in a better projector too.
Yeah.
Are you going to invest in like kind of like a throwaway experience, right? It's just kind of like it's more for the environment more than the quality of the video, right?
100%. Are you going to invest in like a sound bar at least to like amp up the sound? I find that's like the one thing with those projectors where it's like, even if they have built-in audio, like you need to like get a decent sound bar or speaker.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, because the only out that I have on it, you can do an RCA out with an adapter, but it's all just headphone jack, right?
Right.
The stereo. So yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to do that with just regular speakers, because I don't really want to have like a, I don't know. Yeah, a soundbar would probably be the best in that.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to have like a whole stereo system out there.
That's what I settled on, because like my cheap projector too only has like the stereo out, just the headphone jack. So I did that with a splitter to left and right onto a sound bar. And it's just like, yeah, it's not, you know, it's not high fidelity, but it at least gives you a little bit of a thump, where otherwise it just kind of doesn't, it just doesn't have enough oomph with those built-in speakers. So
yeah, because if I have to hook it up to an actual stereo, then I'm running speaker wires all over the place in my shed, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to.
It's so much easier to just get like a 20-foot headphone cable. You know what I mean? Like, they're like $5. So,
yeah.
And that's the nice thing is like, you know, you can just pack them away, because it's a cool experience, but it's one of those things you do like 2 to 3 times a year. But the nice thing is like you get to put it inside your shed. So at least like you can close the door and block out the light. Cause like we always have to do it outside. So it's like, well, once we get past like June 15th, that's not going to work. Cause I'm not keeping my kids up till 1 a.m. And then I have to wait till September again for the sun to start going down.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping my setup is that I can, have it, I can throw it on both sides of it. So I can have it with the door open on one side and watch it from the opposite side if we want to watch inside.
That's pretty awesome. It'll be fun. And then doing like the occasional video game night on those things is fun too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were already playing Double Dash on it, on basically a big garage door.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't done the video game thing since the pandemic, I don't think. I did like an outdoor one. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Pretty fun. Well, that's exciting.
But
you'll have to like start buying more arcade cabinets now because you've got. So are you gonna put the arcade cabinets out in the shed then too, or what are you doing with those? Where are they?
Yeah,
those I didn't ask. Where are they currently?
They're out there too. Yep.
Okay. And
then I kind of have like a setup for like Connect and Wii and all that because the kids like to do those more active games. It's a nice spot to just do it out there.
Well, and for everyone who's listening and maybe doesn't know, because like I'm on Twitter, so I throw my arcade out there. I have an arcade largely based on arcade 1-ups, minus a couple exceptions. But you have proper full arcade cabinets of what again? You got the original Mario Brothers.
I have Mario Brothers, Raiden 2, and currently my Life Force cabinet is not doing so hot.
No, what happened?
The monitor is like does a lot of like sideways or kind of like diagonal. Okay. So I don't know if there's like a knob I have to turn in there or not, but
that was your most jank one though, right? Like that was one that like somebody clearly like put in a cab and like the board is the real value there, right?
Yeah.
You'd probably just be worth your time to get like a JAMA conversion kit and just like throw that thing under your projector, to be honest.
Yeah.
I forgot you're riding too. That's such a fucking sweet game. Well, on the Mario one, like that thing's pretty pristine, original artwork and like side panels and
yeah. I play my Raiden one quite a bit, but I don't know. I'm a programmer by day, so my wrist is cannot handle pressing a button
carpal tunnel
10,000 times.
My wife and I, before we started the podcast, were playing volleyball with our kids, and like we're both doing like the volleyball bumps with the wrists, and it's just like either one of us would hit it, we'd be like, ah! It's like this hurts so bad. It's like my daughter was even like, "What'd you do to your wrist? Did you hurt it as a kid?" And I was like, "No, it's because I work on a computer all day." So,
yep,
it sneaks up on you after 20 years.
Mm-hmm. I'm not the jar of pickles guy anymore in the house.
Yeah, I'm usually the person who hands it off to my wife. I'm like, I can't for you. Well, that's cool. I'm excited to see what you do with that space. I'll at some point have to invite myself to your house and just like check it out because I'm curious.
Yeah.
What else have I been doing? Not much. I guess the last thing I had was Wrexham. Welcome to Wrexham season 3 has finally started. Broadcasting is now coming to Hulu a week or day after it airs, but that continues to be a very good documentary series. First 2 episodes have been good on Hulu. I mean, knowing there's a promotion in this season, it'll have a happy-ish ending. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you know, is it all like filmed in the past season? So you know the outcome?
Yeah. And in fact, they delayed the start of this season's airing because at the outset, they didn't know promotion was in the cards. And then they're like, no, we're definitely going to want to include this in the end of the season.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I've been following the news too. So I know that like with the promotion comes like more strict rules on like how many men you can have on your football team. So they just like released 8 players, and one of them was Ben Tozer, which is like everyone loves that guy. So it's like kind of gutting to see like all these people who like worked hard on the team get cut. But obviously that's just part of the sport, I suppose, as you go up. But it'll be interesting to see where they go. And like, you got to wonder like how Rob and Ryan Reynolds are faring, because like up promotion means like dumping more money in. So, you know, a Hollywood production helps to some extent, but I know they're very much still losing money. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what they do. They'll probably have to take on more investors, you would think, but then what does that do for the show? I don't know.
And it's not still not like top level, like they're not playing like Manchester or anything
right,
like that.
They're third tier, so they're in the third league.
Okay,
the Premier League, but yeah. But they're at least at the point where I think the thing is like you get more money from the league, but it's still like obviously like a drop in the bucket compared to what you need to spend. So, yeah, very good show, pretty uplifting. I'm not a sports guy, but they make sure like it connects with you in a way that you don't need to be invested in the sport. So,
sure,
I recommend.
Yeah, it would be cool if they could do it like in between each week or in between each game, have a new episode, but that would be incredibly time consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wish there was like, I mean, obviously there are ways that you can watch the games, but I wish they would make it easier and like part of the format to like watch full games, but I also understand, I guess, why they can't. So. Yeah, it's pretty wild. To get Americans to care about football is tough. Especially Americans who don't like sports.
Yeah, that's usually not the entry level, right?
Right. But I do like Ryan Reynolds and I do like Sunny in Philadelphia. So there you go.
Well, on to staff picks.
Staff picks, yeah. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I think I've brought this up before. It might even been one of my staff picks in the past. But it's the 30th anniversary of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Which seems, holy shit, I'm old, right?
Right.
But also, they put up a YouTube channel where it's just streaming constant episodes. So we've been doing that a lot in our household lately. And the bummer part about it is like we watch it at kind of the same general time, in the evenings. And I don't know if they have like, they're just going back to back, just running them straight through. The timing almost lands in the same spots every night. So it's like, this is a bummer. Why don't you just like do them randomly, right? Just mix them up all the time. But it seems like they're all in a row or some sort of set order. And that part's the bummer. So then I'm like, okay, kids were really enjoying it because they're kind of getting to that age where they're getting into that weird kind of humor. So I'm like, okay, well, let's, after the third night of watching like the same one, I'm like, okay, let's just go on Max because that's where all the Adult Swim stuff is, right? Go on there. Show is nowhere to be found. So this seems like Max maybe saying, yeah, it's a 30th anniversary. Also, we're dumping it from our thing and then putting it out for free on YouTube so we can write it off as a tax.
Yeah. Max gutted so much of like great Adult Swim content. Like it's bull crap.
There's still a lot of the old stuff on there, but yeah, this one just seems like they cut this for this specific reason.
Well, yeah, and then they dumped Metalocalypse right before the movie came out and then didn't add the movie to Max either. It's like, the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, what am I paying for? I'm not paying for
Space Ghost is like, Space Ghost is like probably the earliest example of like animated alternative humor, right? Like that predated like Adult Swim. It was like weird. It felt weird on Cartoon Network when they put it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the type of humor where they just like pause. Like, I don't know if I can think of anything before that, where they'll just like have characters stare at each other awkwardly. Like, the awkward humor is just super abundant in this. Yeah, it's, I mean, it probably doesn't hold up to a lot of people because it's been done a lot since then in a lot crazier ways. I mean, like we were talking earlier, the Eric Andre show is just this to the extreme, you know? But yeah, just taking the old Hanna-Barbera stuff like they did back in the day and just turning that into
an adult animated talk show with like live action guests that dropped in on like a tube television onto a TV set. Like, I mean, they would get big people. They get like Mark Hamill. They would get like what's her name from Aliens. She was on one. Like, just, it's wild to me.
Yeah. And the later the seasons get, the more like they don't even pay attention to the guests. They don't even talk to them. They're just like, Zorak's like over there just causing havoc, or there's something else going on in the studio, and it's pretty funny. However, on YouTube next to this thing was the Lost Seasons.
Oh.
And I had no idea this existed. Do you remember Game Tap?
Yes. I used to play games on it a lot. Really? It was free. That's how I first played Psychonauts.
Really? That was on there? I guess, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, early 2000s, they really pushed for it. And they had a huge free library. You could pay for this subscription service. Yeah. But yeah, it was like mostly like retro games. But then for whatever reason, Psychonauts is on there. And that's where I played through the majority of that game.
Huh. Well, anyway, it got really surreal for me because I come to find out that like 3 years after the Space Ghost was canceled, after the second revival that they already did, they made 2 seasons specifically for Game Tap.
What?
Just for Game Tap. And the amount of the list of guests are something else. There is an episode featuring our best friend, David Crane, as the guest on Space Ghost. Yes.
So it was like very gamer industry guest focused.
Half of them are. And then there's like a lot of music stuff too. There's like the Bare Naked Ladies, and, you know, they get into that, and Dee Snider and that. But yeah, there's a lot of game stuff. There's what's the Apple guy, not Jobs, but the other one, Wozniak.
Oh yeah.
And Howard Scott Warshaw has an episode, and it's crazy. A lot of these Atari guys, it just seems like the group of guys that were at those conventions, maybe doing these talks, like you do see at MGC.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes sense because like Atari 2600 was a large portion of like the free catalog and like the early Atari games. So,
okay. So
I guess I could see that.
Sense. Yep.
Huh. That's wild. I had no idea.
Yeah. It was surreal watching, you know, our history with David Crane, and then seeing him in one of my favorite shows being interviewed. It was way past, you know, in like 2005, which is like way past what he was doing.
It's so funny too, like how good of a platform Game Tap was and how well it worked. And then just the idea of like how absurd it was that you would pay any amount of money for a subscription platform back in like 2005. But it did the thing, you know what I mean? Like now it's like, of course that makes sense. Like Antstream is basically that. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah. I
totally forgot about them.
Yeah. They have an advertisement or whatever, and it says gametap.com. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to check this out. Goes nowhere. There's nothing on GameTap. So I was pretty excited that I was like, I'm going to go buy this domain. Somebody still owns it, but they're not. It's just empty. Nothing's happening on it.
That's pretty cool.
I was hoping that I'd be able to report to this on this episode that I was the proud owner of GameTap.com. But
and you can have it just forward to our Pinecast.
You could just,
Great.
Claim we had Space Ghost. We could probably make a Space Ghost episode. Like, you just download those cells and make your own. Yeah, make your own. Yeah.
Cardboard cutouts. You're fine.
I think the voice actor's dead now, though. I want to say, but
that's too bad. Well, AI actually, maybe like not. AI could do it.
Maybe not, because I want to say there's that show Jellystone or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I think there's an episode with Space Ghost and Brack and all that stuff in that show too. So I got to check that out.
Speaking of AI, and just like a nod back to our last episode, the new Obscurest Vinyl song, "The Secrets Your Asshole Keeps," top 10. Oh,
I haven't heard it.
Yeah. Well, get out there and Google it.
Yeah.
But my actual staff pick, I changed it last minute. I had something else that I was excited about, but not super excited. So I went with, I was on Twitter earlier today and someone was like, name the best like local small town band in your area. And I was like, well, it's The Suit, which for anyone who has never heard of them, which I would guess is pretty much everyone. The Suit was a Fargo, North Dakota metalcore band, sort of like very inspired by, I would say, A Day to Remember, back in like the early 2000s. They did pretty well. They were on the radio here. They won the Ernie Ball National Battle of the Bands in like whatever year, 2008. They never took a label deal, which I think in part was due to the other fact that the big like hometown metalcore heroes out of Fargo was what is their name? These Hearts. And they notoriously signed to Victory Records, and Victory Records, as everyone knows, fleeced everyone and like ripped all their bands off, who later got sued by A Day to Remember, who won their case and basically put Victory out of business. They still exist as an imprint company, but anyway, all that is to say is like The Suit was a great, fun, stupid band that actually weirdly I started listening to and liking, and then found out that they were all from my hometown of Lisbon, North Dakota, which is a shit stain and a hellhole, and I hate it. But these kids were all about like 2 to 3 years behind me, and I knew a couple of them weirdly, which I didn't realize until I was already into the band. But The Suit is great. If you go on to YouTube and search The Suit, Day After Day was their final album, the only full-length album they put out. They self-published. Listen to Grunt Force Trauma. It is a great song. And yeah, it's just fun, stupid, loud, screamy metalcore music with that typical 2008's dance influence, sing along, like group vocals, one guy who just screams and then another guy who's a clean vocalist. And yeah, if you like Andrew WK, you'll like this.
Yep. I did look up like one song and I'm like, I know I heard this
at
some point. Like it had to have been on the local radio. Like you said, I'm sure I've heard it.
The Way That We Fall was the one that got played a lot, but they also had a cover of, because that was also a big thing in the metalcore scene to like get noticed, get recognition, go viral on MySpace, was to do a cover of a pop band. So they were pretty notoriously popular for their cover of Lady Gaga's Just Dance, which was very good. And I saw them live several times. They were a great live band. A lot of metalcore music, the Joey Sturgis era. Those were records that were produced in studio to like meet a concept or a sound, and like you couldn't actually replicate them, or those bands usually weren't capable of replicating it live. I can say The Suit sounded just as good live when the people in the house were able to mix it right. They sounded fantastic. They could sing, they could play. Not that their stuff's like super technical, but yeah.
Are they still doing it or not?
No. So they quit. I don't know, maybe like 2012 ish. Then they were going to come back and do a big hometown reunion show, in 2020, April of 2020. We all know how that went. I had tickets to that, and then they postponed. They're like, well, we're going to wait and we'll see what happens in June. And they're like, well, this isn't going to fucking happen. And they haven't played since. So, but yeah, the main screamer vocalist. He was a couple grades below me. I didn't know him real well. We talked a few times. I was at a house party once and he busted out his acoustic guitar and played an acoustic cover of Silverchair's Anna's song. And I was like, I like that guy. So we talked about Silverchair for a while and yeah, he seemed like a good enough guy, but I don't know. They're a dumb band. They're a time and place band, but I feel now that like the world has come around to metalcore isn't an abomination. They're a band that maybe some people should check out. So The Suit, Day After Day, check it out on YouTube. It's out there. I think they're probably on Spotify. I don't know. They, like I said, they never got a major label or indie label deal, so it's harder to find their music.
They're probably the only Lisbon band on Spotify, I would say. Huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's another one called Go Murphy, which I also know all those guys. And they actually, they piss me off. Well, actually, one of my great friends from high school, me and him skateboarded together every day, was the drummer in that band. They won the Fargo Battle of the Bands, beating out The Suit. And they do like jazzed influence, like jam band shit, which I don't know. I could fuck that stuff, to be honest. Like I was pissed when I found out they beat out The Suit. But yeah, another band that they didn't get signed either, but I don't know how the hell that worked. They applied, like entered some contest for like some national, I don't know if it was like an insurance ad or something, but they won. So like their music was like syndicated and played on like some fucking national ad campaign. But I mean, again, like, okay, you're like elevator music to the background of a, but funny enough, those guys were, I'm going down the rabbit hole now and getting way off topic, but those guys were the basis of another one of my friends who skateboarded, and they were like the big hometown band when I was growing up called Cloud 9. So it was like all those guys, they would like every pep rally and all that homecoming bullshit they would get to play, like the high school didn't play. So they would do like, Polly from Nirvana or like an MXPX song. Like, I don't know. They were kind of like, cool. They were kind of the cool kids, right? Like that was the band that everyone looked up to. And then they formed, they continued Cloud 9, did that for a while after into college. And then they went and did different things. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
It was fun to be in a pep rally in high school and listen to a bunch of people play MXPX Doing Time, knowing that like me and 5 other kids had heard that song before. So.
Yeah. I can't think of another person that would have been in my school that knew any MXPX.
Yeah. Nothing. I had a couple cool people that like showed me a lot of cool music, but it just like, I hate even thinking back to that time because I hate that fucking town so much and like how repressing and small town minded bullshit. Like me with my blue hair and a skateboard, like I might as well have just had like a dick growing on my forehead.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of what, I mean, if you are a punk band or whatever, that's kind of what you grow out of, or you grow, it helps you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Punk rock largely, well, saved my life might be a stretch, but pushed me through some real shit. So, but yeah, it's weird. Like, yeah, that whole like small music community in my shitty little hometown. But yeah.
Yeah. Cause how many, what's Lisbon? 4,000 or 5,000?
Oh God, no, like 2,000 tops. Like when I was graduating, maybe 2,000. My graduating class was like 68 people. So,
okay. Huh.
Yeah. I mean, beautiful little town. Like as far as like North Dakota in general is generally a large, flat and uneventful place, but it was in a nice scenic river valley. We had hills, we had a river, we had a lake outside of town. Kind of unusual. It just happens to be populated by about 2,000 of the worst fucking people you've ever met in your life. So my parents moved after I graduated and I've never looked back. So place can burn. Anyway,
when you're out on the edge courage when you're ready to fall. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on us all.
If you're having a good time with us at Weekend Rental, I think you might enjoy all the great geeky stuff found on the Geekade Podcast Network. They've got podcasts about games, music, movies, and more. Plus, if you order off their secret menu, also known as the Geekade Patreon, you just might find an exclusive movie podcast hosted by Ryan and myself. Check it out over at geekade.com. And hey, if you'd like to turn Weekend Rental into a true multimedia experience, our YouTube and Twitch channels might just be for you.
Do you need a friend to hold your hand? Do you need someone who understands? I could be the one to walk with you down to the end.
On that uplifting note, should we move on to the weekend rental?
Let's do it.
All right. So the weekend rental, we pick a game for a given system. This time out, we are going with Top Secret Mission Go-Go 13 on the NES. We give this thing a playthrough. We decide personally whether we would buy, rent, or burn that game. I believe this one came out in 1988. And it's an interesting choice for the NES because at that time, anime and manga and stuff hadn't really permeated much of our culture. So
Not popularly, no.
it's sort of a lost reference on Western audiences. But yeah,
It's adjacent to a James Bond, right?
sure. Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it's definitely playing off a lot of those tropes.
13 is totally different than 007.
Yeah, exactly. He's a specialized sniper, Duke Togo.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's a long running manga. I think it's still going. It's from like the 60s or something. It's pretty crazy. To see it come out on NES, it's probably like how we were like, Gilligan's Island has a NES game. Like they're probably like, dude,
That's
what?
true.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but I think like, how did this get made? Because there's a lot of stuff in here that goes beyond like what the Nintendo censors was looking for. Specifically, there's a lot of blood splatter.
And there's that one scene that you might hit that not so subtly references a adult encounter in a hotel room. But I know where Grand Theft Auto got that from.
Yeah, it was about as hot coffee as it could get on the NES.
I just love the added effect of like the life meter ticking up. Like, boink, 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 boink.
That is not how it works for me. My life is in jeopardy at some points.
Even trying to get into the situation where you're getting towards the hot coffee is, you're putting your life on the line. Am I going to be castrated or am I going to get lucky? I don't know. It's a 50-50 shot these days, But yeah, it's what blows my mind with this game is like the NES cartridge has the worst box art. Like it's just unappealing for anyone who's uninitiated with the property, which would be most people back then, I would assume. There's no reason to pick this up and play it. And then I'd argue that like the visuals in the main game, or at least the on foot part of the game, are pretty barbaric, even by 1988 standards. But
the action part of it, yeah.
Yeah, but the presentation of the rest of it is fantastic. You know what I mean? Like the cutscenes, like the art direction on the characters' faces, the story, it's all really engaging. It's just wrapped around this, like, it feels like this engaging story and graphics wrapped around what I would consider to be like 3 almost 2600 game modes, slightly more fleshed out, like in between, like, cause you're either in the on foot segment or you're in a sniping segment or you're in the like shooter segment, depending on the stage. But none of it is good enough to carry the game forward without like the other pieces.
Yeah. The on foot one is by probably the worst, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There are more after you keep going. I don't know if you got a little bit farther than we went on the stream, but
I didn't.
You do end up having a water level.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's kind of like a shooter, but just in the water. And then you get to like these secret bases that are first person, and you're traversing all these hallways, like Doom style, like Castle Wolfenstein style.
So it's almost like Rescue the Embassy mission then for NES, which I think is very close to this game, like in terms of like what it offers.
Yep. Yeah. The first person stuff was pretty impressive to me. Like it, obviously it's it's press up and it's rendering, but there are like some spots where it's like animating different sections, like you're falling sometimes, and it's doing the animation of as if you were in 3D too, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, the sniper mode I like quite a bit. Just having that.
Oh, it's cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, you could have done it a million different ways and just been like, okay, but they did it in a way that was like, it really felt like you were really far away in that helicopter, like trying to find this guy and like sniping this guy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. Like the overall package is like pretty damn cool. I just wish like it feels like it went to like 6 out of 10 on like where it could have been in terms of polish of like the visuals, but then just tightening the gameplay and making like the on foot pieces slightly more engaging. Like it wouldn't have taken that much, you know what I mean? Because I just look at something like Codename Viper, you know, like if they had gotten to that level of it, like maybe not the one hit kills, but like just had the time to flesh it a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely needed more in the action
side. Or Rolling Thunder even, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been great. But just the fact that like it feels, you know, you have to go to different spots, you know? You have to traverse different areas. It does feel like you're in a world, you know, it's not just I'm scrolling through something.
It's definitely
backdrop.
It's definitely a lot better than I gave it credit for initially. Because I mean, I've had this in my collection forever, and I just kind of wrote it off as like lackluster. But yeah, as you push through it, like it's a very innovative game on the console. Like it does a lot of really neat stuff. So it's kind of like hard not to appreciate the charm in between the jank. It definitely deserves more recognition than I think it gets.
Yep. And I think my favorite part about it is that, you know, there's a lot of talking to different characters. You go to people and meet up with different characters. And you would think that there would be, you know, stuff you could choose to say. Like many games, you know, they give you different options. And one of the options is always like 3 or 4 dots, right? Of just silence. This game just chooses a Duke Togo. He might be a mute. I'm not sure. Or he just kind of never says anything other than I'll give it my best.
Right.
Much, so.
Yeah, he almost doesn't have a personality. And maybe that was kind of intentional too, is to like, you're the character. Like they don't want to like kind of a Link, you know, like Link doesn't say a lot, but
right.
He's the good guy.
Is he like programmed?
Right.
You know what I mean? Their secret code that Duke Togo goes off on.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with this. Like, I wish I'd have given it more time years ago, because I just, like I said, I just wrote it off. Like I put it in, like you see those visuals, you're like, what the fuck is this? Like I'm not going to do it, and because it is frustrating. Like there's frustrating elements to the gameplay, but like when you have some save states added in, like it's kind of a whole different ball game, you know?
Yeah. If you can explore without being really frustrated, it's pretty good. I did get to a point, I think it's in Greece. You go to Greece and you go to the Parthenon and there's just like people shooting rockets at you. where that got a little bit. There's women, just skimpily clad women shooting guns at you and like doing karate kicks in the air at you. And your only weapon is shooting guns while standing up. You can't, Duke can't bend over and shoot a gun. That would help tremendously in this situation, but he's unable to.
It's impossible.
Yeah. So that part, the difficulty got pretty high, and I got past the Parthenon and I got to the theater of like Dionysus and found out, oh, there's nobody there. I have to come back to this later after I talk to somebody else on the way other end of, the map or whatever.
Oh, no.
And of course, all these people, just they just respawn in. So that at that point I was like, okay, well, I'm done with this now. But up until that point, I was having a pretty good time. Just because I think the variety really helped quite a bit. Because even when you're on foot, at least like every 2 minutes, they'll throw you in that first person where you have a cursor around the screen and you have to shoot helicopters or people on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do their best to try and keep you engaged, even with like very basic game elements. It's.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they couldn't have like maybe focused more on making a better main game and like not done as many ancillary things, but again, like that's part of the charm too, I think.
Yeah. It's
funny, this thing's never gotten like an overhaul or anything, or you know what I mean? Like in a world where hidden gems get rebooted and like remastered, like it's kind of this property still has some value. It wouldn't take much to like scrub some visuals,
Yeah, I was trying to look. So I looked up like what other. I have to imagine there's more games, which I didn't realize the Mafat Conspiracy is the same. It's a sequel to this.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. But then beyond that, we didn't get anything else. There was like PlayStation games and arcades and stuff like that Japan got, which might be interesting to see how those play. But
did you see that arcade game though? Did you look at that cab?
No, so is it just a sniper?
Yeah, it's a light gun game with like a full sniper mounted on a thing, and it has like the scope and everything. It looks fucking wild.
Wow.
Like, yeah, but that would be great. It was basically like that. What was that series that was popular? Silent Scope. Yes, it was basically that, like with the gun mounted. Yep. That had to have been the inspiration for it, because it looked super dependent on you looking through that reticle to like zoom in on the screen. I was like, man, I want to play that cab. Because the closest thing we got to that over here was Operation Wolf with like that big freaking Uzi.
Yep.
It was amazing.
It's so like professional sniper is a cool dude, right? But overall, he's not like can't imagine they made too many movies about this, because like what do? You know, James Bond can kind of do hand to hand. He does gun, he chases after people, does all that stuff. Well, Sniper gets up in a tower and he shoots a guy.
Right.
I guess he gets a girl after that, but like there's no real action to it.
Well, I feel like he's largely missing the point of being a sniper, which is like being virtually anonymous. And this guy's just like strolling down the street and everybody knows who he is, which seems like probably not the best if your occupation is sniper, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
At least my Duke Toko had a hair trigger too. So as soon as he saw anybody that resembled a human, there was a bullet flying.
Luckily, they just inexplicably pass through pedestrians and don't kill them.
Yep.
There's no penalty for that. That is the one game mechanic I like, is like, obviously everything you get hit with causes you damage, but it's also nice that every kill you get gives you hit points back, which is a nice, that's a nice game mechanic,
Yeah.
It's like you can struggle, but you can claw your way back out.
For what year this came out, there was so many ideas in here that really didn't always work perfectly, but it really set a tone to like, oh, they were going for something here.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, what do you think? Byron Burns scale, what would you give this one?
I think I have to give it a buy just because of that fact. Because there's a lot of NES games that just don't give you this type of variety and like real like immersion, I would say.
Sure.
it's a really immersive game into that character, which is really cool. I like that in games already. So to see an NES game pull that off in any meaningful way is pretty cool. And is it the only NES game with blood? I mean, I guess Bionic Commando has that scene, but there's
not a lot.
When you're in that base and you're shooting all these guys, it's straight up like blood splatters everywhere.
Yeah, it definitely pushed the boundaries of the rating system, I'm sure. I don't know how it got through Nintendo, to be honest, but
yeah,
cool that it did. I don't know if I'd go buy. I would say for sure rent. Like, I think everyone needs to give this thing some time and like sink more into it than just the surface level stuff, which I'm guilty of back before this. I just think it'd be like one of those good experiences that it would surprise you, right? Like, it looks like a generic game. You know, you'd rent it, get it home. It looks like a piece of crap kind of from the outset. And then you get into it and like, oh, there's actually something here, you know, like this seems like one of those really fun rental type games to me. I don't know that I would need to go back to it after experiencing some of the highlights, but it's still better than average for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
But I guess with that's another buy, rent, burn in the books and another episode down. So
it is another episode. In honor of this, I almost just want to make this like a silent outro, just like Duke Togo style. Just don't say anything. But
I'll do my best. I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, I'll do my best. The world's on the line. I'll do it. I guess I'll do my best. But yeah, you can find us on Twitter, and we're also have an email address at weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. We stream on Twitch on our off Tuesdays.
Yeah, so this upcoming Tuesday, if you're listening to this,
yep,
when it comes out,
so a few days, we play our buy, rent, burn. This last time we played, obviously, Go 13, and our goal was to get to the hot scene everybody wants to see. It was almost too hot for Twitch. We had to shut it down quick. We didn't want to get our channel shut down. But
temporary ban.
Twitch TV /weekend rental. But until next time, be kind, rewind. ...
I'll do my best.